Oh, yeah.
It's professional now. Yeah.
We are fully fledged professionals here on the 107 podcast.
Exactly.
And welcome to the 107 podcast with myself, Jacob, and my co-host, Ash. And we just witnessed a riveting Saudi Arabia Grand Prix.
I was on the edge of my seat.
Yep.
Yeah, I was on the edge of my seat.
It wasn't the most spectacular race, but there we go.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunately a sign of things to come. I think, we just saw really how fast that Red Bull is, and we could say we're watching the Formula 1.5 championship.
Almost, yeah. I think there's actually side note, by the way. There's actually genuinely there's a Formula 1 subreddit called Formula 1.5, and it discounts.
Okay.
It doesn't count the first three teams on like the top three teams, so it only counts the midfield and below. So if you'd have taken away the top three teams, I think 2 years ago or whatever, Lando Norris would have won the thing by like 100 points. Please excuse me while I just cough. But it's a genuine thing.
We're professionals here.
It's like Reddit. Hold on, let me find it. Reddit F1.5. It's a genuine thing. This is a complete. This is a complete segue. But yes, so we are here to discuss, appreciate, and to celebrate the drivers and teams part of the Formula 1 midfield who maybe do not get the recognition and visibility they deserve. In F1 2020, in this year, they will celebrate and discuss the following teams: Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Alpine, Aston Martin, Haas, McLaren, and Williams. And then Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull, their points and teams will be completely disregarded. So it creates like a championship based on teams that don't necessarily do particularly well, which I think is a very brilliant idea because it makes that midfield more interesting. It's completely irrelevant, but it's very interesting.
Are you telling me Alonso could win the championship?
On a technicality, yes. So the unofficial 2023 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix race results, Alonso finished first, Ocon finished second, Gasly finished third.
Yeah.
Because obviously you get rid of those big teams. So I don't know if there's like a championship table. Here we go. Yeah, drivers and constructors following the Grand Prix. Alonso is first. Alonso's
Gasly
first.
must be second.
Gasly second. Stroll third. And then Aston Martin first. Alpine second. Haas third. To say Haas is third of the drivers' constructors, that's interesting for sure. Anyway, sorry, that was a complete segue. So, the race. As we said, it wasn't the most exciting race, but it is what it is. I'm not complaining. It was just an average race. Like, nothing particularly exciting happened. I think the Jeddah, the Jeddah racetrack itself, let's have a quick conversation about the track itself. I think for me personally, not the most exciting track. It's fun to drive on like the game and stuff like that, but for racing, I don't think it's particularly interesting. The only time it gets interesting is when there's a big crash and they have to have some sort of safety car. Otherwise, you've got DRS overtakes, and that's about it.
Yeah, it seems to have the set places to overtake, right? And,
which is fine. I don't mind that too much. But it doesn't. It just doesn't make for the best racing, in my opinion.
No. It's too compact. It's like I said, it's fun, it's flowy, the drivers love it. In terms of an actual racing spectacle, it is a little bit of a procession by the DRS zones. So, well, it's out of the way now.
True. Should we start with quali? We're talking about it like Debbie Downers, but let's be honest. We've got some interesting talking points to go through. So should we start with? We need to start with a new addition to the.
To the Sky Sports F1 team. And is she on F1 TV Pro?
So she's not on F1 TV Pro on the F1 TV channel, if that makes sense. But she's part of the international coverage. So it means that if you choose the international channel, which is what I typically do, then you can hear her during the race. I didn't know who on earth she was, to be completely honest.
Neither did I.
zero idea. And then all of a sudden, I hear Crofty go, "Oh, Bernie Collins," and I'm expecting a bloke's voice, and this Irish woman pops up. And I'm like, "Who the hell is this?" So, I mean, not to take away from her or her skill or her, her background or anything like that. I just wasn't expecting an Irish woman to pop up and start talking about strategy.
No.
It just caught me off guard. Again, nothing against her, just caught me off guard. But the insights she had were pretty good.
They were very good, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's got a decent resume. She was a performance engineer at McLaren and then head of race strategy at Aston. So I think it's good because sometimes, you get these drivers in, Damon Hill, Johnny Herbert, probably not too much, but to a certain extent, Nico, who haven't been in the sport for like 1, 2, however many years, right?
Yeah.
And while they have a great insight into how it runs, they don't have a modern insight into how the sport runs. Nico's probably the closest you can get right now. But bringing Bernie, who's last year was with the new regs, the new cars, in deep in that position that she was in, it's really interesting. And some of the stuff that she was saying was like, oh wow, didn't know that, So yeah, she's a great addition to the team. Kind of brings that technical, strategic knowledge while not like talking in big words.
True,
makes it easy to understand. I think that's a really good addition to the team. And I look forward to hearing what she has to say throughout the further races.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I just wasn't expecting that at all. I expected like an old white man, which is typically what we get on these sorts of things, but it is
there
what it is.
There was an old white man called Bernie, wasn't there?
Well,
Bernie
there was,
Eccleston. So we just have to have a Bernie in Formula One.
Yeah, apparently so. But yeah, it's going to be good to see how she sort of comes into play and criticises the Ferrari strategy for the rest of the season. That's for sure.
They made some okay calls in Jeddah.
They did, but before we do talk about the race, should we talk about the actual qualifying, what happened day before the race, how that sort of went? There was obviously a bit of drama. We're going to start off with the main drama, which obviously was Max's issues with drive shaft was in the race. Spoiler alert. But his gearbox engine issue, I think it is what it is. I don't think it's the Bahrain curse just yet from winning the first race. I don't think it's that yet. Just it is what it is. But it's also very interesting that obviously Leclerc has, already had a penalty as well for taking another ECU. I think it was ECU.
No, was it ECU?
Is it ECU?
Yeah.
No,
that was the energy unit. So.
EK something.
Yeah, ECU is a car's computer.
Yeah, that is ECU.
So energy.
It was some electrical thing. I can't remember exactly what it was. Anything. It was some electrical thing. But it's interesting to see that they both have one of them's had a penalty, and obviously the other one is going through parts, like Max is going through parts as well. So it's going to make it potentially quite interesting towards the end of the season, where we do have races where Max and Charles are starting from the middle of the grid and trying to work their way up. That was the point that I was trying to go for. Obviously, Max out and qualifying 15th, and then Perez on pole, which was, let's be honest, it was pretty obvious it was going to happen. I think there was a little bit of a scare when Stroll set the purple sector 1 on that final lap, but then it just completely fell apart. It just horribly fell apart.
I mean, probably used up too much of his tyres.
I think potentially, and obviously Alonso P3, but obviously with the Leclerc penalty, dropping back, moved up, to the front row. And speaking of the Ferraris, Charles obviously did pretty good getting into P2, but then obviously was pushed all the way down to, was it P12?
Yeah, 10th place grid penalty, yeah.
I'm just double checking. Yes, P12. And obviously you had Carlos Sainz up in 4th, which isn't too bad from Carlos, to be fair. I guess I was just surprised at the Mercedes' speed. I guess the zero side pods on long flowy tracks like this obviously reduces the drag, so I think they did a bit better than I personally expected. And
would you say so?
I think they did a little bit better than I thought.
But
I think obviously it means less drag, but I would like to point out before we carry on talking about the other teams with their qualifying, Mercedes seem to be talking about their car like it is a Williams from 4 years ago or a Haas from 3 years ago. They're talking about it like it's an absolute tractor, right? When in reality, you was very close to a podium this week. It's not as bad. It's just purely because they aren't absolutely completely destroying the rest of the field. They're talking it like it's the end of the world, which confuses me massively because it just doesn't. It's just a bit strange. I don't fully understand.
I think what it is the drop off in performance from 2020 to 2021. So it's like Red Bull were there in 2021 and are there in 2022. Sorry, in 2020 and then 2021.
Yeah.
Ferrari got back up there. It's like, how have we gone from one of the quickest teams to now the fourth quickest team? How is one of our customer teams ahead of us? It's like, I think it's not so much like the car, how we like talking about it as a Williams, as how we had such a massive drop off. You know, have the new regulations affected us this badly, and why? And they are the only different car out there with their
the only drastically different car. But at the same time, like I said, they're talking like they're finishing 18th, 19th every week. It just doesn't quite work for me. I think personally, it's just like your car isn't that bad. Like, it's really not. I understand it's not winning every race.
It's bad for them.
I know the expectation in the Mercedes factory in Brackley will be so high, but for me, it doesn't seem it doesn't seem as doom and gloom as it is in reality.
I think the media makes it more doom and gloom,
probably.
Right? But
so does Toto.
Yeah, I think it's just
so does Toto and Lewis apparently.
I think it's just a massive drop off, and but you know what? They're making lots of changes. I think they've got a new spec car coming. Middle of the season.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, sorry, that was a small sidetrack, exactly like Formula 1.5. But there we go. So next team up, I guess, is McLaren. Piastri obviously getting into Q3. That was unexpected for sure. I think it shows that McLaren does have something in there.
Let's roll back a little bit.
Okay.
You're saying that about Mercedes, that they're talking about their car. That's Williams. A lot of people are talking about their McLaren like it's a Williams, and it's not that bad of a car.
No, it's...
Is it mid... No. They've had some rotten luck.
It's a lower-end midfield car. That's what it is.
It's
a lower-end
midfield
car.
We're all of a sudden in the back of the grid, which they were in Jeddah. But,
true.
But I don't think it's that bad. With Piastri getting into Q3... Lando will come good with that car.
He was just unlucky with tapping the wall, and then the damage for Piastri in the first lap, and Lando had damage in the second lap, something like that.
He has to change his front wing, but
so it is crap luck. Although I did make a tweet from the 107 account, which by the way, when we get to Williams, we need to talk about 107. But I did make a tweet from the 107 account, which was I'm just loading it up, which says, it's a quote retweet from Zach Brown, which said, "Tough race after an unlucky start with damage to both cars on the opening lap." Completely agree with that. "Made it too difficult to turn things around, but we tried hard. Oscar P15, Lando P17. Yeah, all right, fine, nothing wrong with that." Then he says, "Time to get our season back on track in Australia." And I quite treated it saying, "Back on track? Sorry, what? At what point has it been on track?" Am I wrong?
No, you're a Twitter troll is what you are.
It's not. Well, the 107 podcast Twitter account is a Twitter troll. But for me, I don't think it's ever been on track. I think if you're McLaren, you could... my papaya tinted glasses back on. If you're McLaren, you would literally just say, or maybe not admit it, I don't know if that's the smartest move, but let's be honest, your season starts in Baku. If you're a McLaren fan, you know that big upgrade package or that big changing package is coming in Baku. That's when the season starts for McLaren. The first few races are just, if we can nick a point here or there, or if we can learn more about how, or like the different front wing setups and stuff that we could do. So this is my way of dealing with it as a McLaren fan, is that anything before Baku doesn't count, okay? That's my thing.
This is your therapy session. This is your therapy
the
session.
season hasn't got started for McLaren yet. They need to have where they quote unquote should have been at the beginning of the season. But obviously were delayed because they changed the concept and changed the direction they wanted to take in the car because the direction they have at the moment wasn't optimal, etc., etc. So it's going to be very interesting to see where they are after Baku and the races after that. But that's my papaya tinted glasses trying their best to find a silver lining, I guess.
Let them have a couple of clean races, see how it goes.
Yeah.
And, judge them at the end of the season.
Yeah, I do agree with that. But then obviously there's nothing really of note of Alpine for quali. But comparing them to Alpine, where McLaren and Alpine were battling 2 seasons ago pretty well, and then last season they battled up until the last 2 or 3 races when it all sort of fell apart for McLaren. And then comparing McLaren now with Alpine are leaps and bounds ahead. So that's, I think, where the comparison comes from too. But it doesn't seem to be as all doom and gloom as it is with Mercedes. And I would argue the McLaren situation is worse than the Mercedes situation. McLaren and AlphaTauri are the only 2 teams that haven't scored points. Mercedes were this close to a P3. And you're telling me that, the situation is somehow worse at Mercedes. I understand the expectation, but that's where, for me, I'm like, this just doesn't make sense.
Nah, I think... Yeah... I just think, there wasn't much to go on from last season.
No,
they were midfield there. Yeah, but it's only been race 2.
True. Yeah, exactly.
But and I think the rest of that, there really wasn't much of note in qualifying, except
not
for
really.
Hulkenberg at qualifying K-Mag.
Mm-hmm.
So he seems to be a bit of a quali specialist.
Yep.
It's a little bit different in the race, but. With Hulkenberg out qualifying K-Mag twice, what does that say about Mick Schumacher?
That's a very good question. I don't know. I genuinely have no idea.
There's a lot of romanticism about Mick Schumacher, right?
True.
Schumacher back in, he's a nice guy and all that. But it seems to me that he just might not be good enough, unfortunately. I want to be proved wrong. Prove me wrong, but just going on what we're seeing, K-Mag was a better driver last season.
True.
And then this season, Hulkenberg being out of Formula One for a few years, coming in.
You say that, but I mean, Hulkenberg
quality.
finished P12 and Kevin finished P10.
Yeah.
So I mean, Magnussen was the only one of the drivers who's so far scored any points for them. So I would argue that until Hulkenberg pulls in some points, I don't think there's that much of a comparison just yet. How long did it take Mick to score his first points compared to how long is it going to take Hulkenberg to score his first points? Should we have a quick Google? Let's see.
I don't know, but
how long. I'm going to double check just purely from a comparative thing. 1 lap, of course. Nico's going to take it 100%, and that's absolutely fine. But so far, I genuinely I do think Nico Hulkenberg is the better driver. Probably would have been around about the same in terms of salary and stuff like that. Maybe a bit more because he's more experienced, won Le Mans, etc., etc. But in terms of not completely binning the car, you have to go for Hulkenberg. You do. I think although obviously it wasn't the most popular PR move, bringing in Hulkenberg over Schumacher was the right thing to do.
That's the thing. You can't do it for PR, right?
No, true.
You need points. You need performances. You need results, right? You need that prize money. You need to develop the car. But yeah, apart from that, nothing really of note in qualifying.
Yeah.
Let's get on to the race.
Yes, let's.
Let's start with the winners. Red Bull. I guess we'll be saying that a lot. They seem to be having some technical issues and seem to be managing the race throughout. I know Max was complaining, seemed to be the drive shaft again. But in general, they were just too quick. They just sped past people.
Yeah.
I don't know. Martin Brundle mentioned it a lot throughout the race. And he goes, there's something like Red Bull have done something with their DRS that makes it extra powerful.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think they've just got a really good engine. They are super fast. I don't know if the DRS is extra powerful.
Yes and no. I think that essentially what it is the way that the rest of the bodywork works in such a way that it drives so much, or it drives air in a different way to that rear wing compared to the other teams. So there's less or more air on that rear wing. And then when the DRS opens up, there's obviously a lot less, but it just does it in a smarter way, I think. I don't know. I've got no idea, but I think it's the aeroflow throughout the rest of the car and how it impacts the back of the car. That's what it means, what they mean in terms of like, it's more powerful because, yeah. I don't think it's in terms of like, they're doing anything like, I don't know, a bigger wing or a smaller wing or it's at a different angle or whatever. It's purely the way that the air from the rest of the car hits that rear wing, I think. I don't know. I am not Adrian Newey. And I really do need to read that book, How to Build a Formula One car. Is that what it is, or is it How to Build a Race Car? How to Build a Car, yeah. I couldn't remember the name of it.
How to Build a Car.
That's my lack of wheel knowledge. But yeah, no, I haven't read it. I don't fully understand it because, yeah, I'm not a Formula One engineer. But at the same time, it's just the way that the rest of that car works so beautifully that then when the air does hit that rear wing, it does it in such a way when DRS hits or, opens up that it works a lot more efficiently.
Are you saying because the car has so much downforce that helps it to be as quick as it is?
So
when they open that rear wing, it alleviates some of that downforce, and they're just a lot.
Yeah, I think if you imagine it like this, so for example, the rear wing from that Red Bull is 50% of the downforce, and 50% of the downforce is from the actual car itself. The rest of the car, the floor, the front wing, whatever it is. And when that rear wing opens up, the rear wing downforce goes from 50% to 30%, let's say. However, because of the way that the air flows over, for example, the Ferrari, that maybe 60% of the downforce comes from the actual car itself and 40% comes from the rear wing. So then when you open up the rear wing and you lose 20% of the downforce, you've still got more drag on the rest of the car. And so it just works in a slightly different way. I think that's what they mean. It's just that the air, or that's what I mean essentially, is that the air hits that rear wing in such a different way, or more important parts of the air coming off the rest of the car hits it in such a certain way that it just is more effective because of the methodology behind the rest of the car. I think that's what it is. I'm not doubting the engine, by the way. I think the engine is solid. Although it is obviously very interesting to see those AlphaTauris at the back of the field with the same engine. So I don't know whether or not that says a lot. Although, to be fair, when you look at it, that the Alfa Romeo was obviously at the back of the field this week, but the Ferrari was at the front of the field. So again, I think that's not to say that it's specifically the engine, but I think the aero just works so much more efficiently for that Red Bull compared to the other cars for when DRS is taken into consideration.
Yeah, how scary is that? They're super quick without DRS, and then you can just put Max in 15th, and he'll just get up second like halfway through the race.
It was.
There was a safety car.
I think those DRS zones in Jeddah, they are so long, right? It's pretty easy to overtake in those DRS zones. Overtaking on areas outside of those DRS zones is seemingly very difficult. I think you've got the end turn, like that banked 14-degree bank turn right at the end, like halfway through the lap, like end of sector 1, early sector 2, like just as you come back on yourself. I think that's probably a decent overtaking area. And I guess turn 1/turn 2. But other than that, the DRS zones are just the easiest places to get overtakes done. So there's not many other places to do overtakes, but those DRS zones are, prime overtaking space, which is again why I think the race was very procedural, and although yes, Max can absolutely trounce over everyone, those DRS zones are just make it so easy.
You say that, but it took Magnussen a few tries, didn't it, to get past Yuki?
True.
And but
I think that was partly from what I saw. I think that was partly battery usage. Yuki was very clever with battery usage.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. But talking about Formula 1.5, I mean, Red Bulls are in a league of their own. I think a lot of people were riding off the season because it's Max, the Red Bull's fastest car. He'll just cruise away. For this to be interesting, Sergio needs to bring his A game and needs to be challenging Max every race.
Yeah,
and
street circuits are the place that Sergio will do that.
Yeah, but there's not enough street circuits for him to do it, and we don't know what Max would have done, right? Because if you look at, was it 2021, he was on an ace lap, right?
True.
And yeah, obviously Sergio had some issues last season, but we don't know what Max would have done. But they need to be fighting each other if we want this season to be at least interesting for who's going to win the championship, right? We need a Nico versus Lewis, exactly. But it was interesting that there's already some drama starting up between them around the fastest lap.
Yeah, I think...
Where they were told not to go for it, and then Max is like, it matters to me.
Was Max told not to go for it? I don't know if he was.
What's his name? GP said it was like, it's not of concern at the moment. We don't hear every radio. But from what Christian said, apparently Sergio did go for it on the last lap, and he messed up his sector one, and then Max
just abandoned it.
Well.
Yeah,
whether they both knew, who knows? But he went for it and got that extra point. And
yeah, see, that's my thing is that you don't fully know. Like if Max wasn't told do not go for fastest lap, then I don't see him giving it a go that much of an issue.
Well, that's what Sergio said in the post-race press conference, is that they were told don't go for it.
True, but how many times have we seen, not even Red Bull, any team, oh yeah, we told your other teammate that, and you just haven't. You just know that they haven't. They've lied to you over the radio.
That's what it means, right? Is that if there's drama between them, how's it going to affect the championship? And we've already seen what happens when they don't listen to each other. You get the Monaco situation.
True.
And you get the Brazil situation, right? So, for whatever reason, something happens throughout the season, and Sergio needs to help Max, or vice versa. Could they go back?
Yeah.
Say, well, you know what?
I don't know.
Because it's happened before.
Yeah,
What's to stop it
exactly.
from happening again, right? So, yeah. On to the next team. Ferrari.
Yes.
I thought Charles had a pretty solid race.
Yeah, he did. He didn't really put that much of a foot wrong. I think one thing for both of those Ferraris is that they do not like that hard tyre, or they did not like that hard tyre during the race. They seem to be a lot slower than they predicted on that hard tyre, which is a bit of a shame because I was looking forward to them sort of pushing forward a bit more, which they obviously just.
But I thought they would get past the Mercedes.
Yeah.
And they didn't. It kind of just went Red Bulls, Aston, and then Mercedes and Ferrari.
Yeah.
Just throughout the race. So
yeah.
It kind of like goes back to that point where everyone's like, what you were saying, the Mercedes is a Williams, it's a backfield car, but they were ahead of the Ferraris throughout.
True.
Whether it could be tyre or whatever, they were comfortably ahead. But yeah, solid race. I thought it was interesting that Carlos mentioned that they seem to be suffering now a little bit from dirty air from the cars in front, which was the whole point of the regulations, was to reduce that. So obviously the aerodynamic gains that have been found from last year to this have started to produce some dirty air and found it tough to follow. And maybe that could kind of contribute to maybe the lack of overtaking in the race.
Yeah, I also feel like the teams. Let's be honest. If you're a team developing a car and you develop a part, let's say part A, which is pretty standard, sets a normal lap time. Then you have part B, which works very well. And then you have part C, which works just as well. However, it creates dirty air for the car behind, or not as clean air for the car behind. I know exactly which part I'm choosing, because you do not care about the car behind you at all.
No, of course. So it's not their problem to care about the car
exactly.
behind them.
So I think that teams will potentially not really care that much about giving other cars dirty air or something like that, and will potentially even use it as an advantage, like adding, winglets or changing their front wings or whatever to create dirty air or rear or whatever. If they know that they can create dirtier air from a part which, compared to another part which does almost the exact same thing but doesn't create dirty air, they're going to do it. Because it's any advantage they can possibly get. So I think that it's interesting that was said, essentially, but at the same time it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. But I don't think it would be as bad as it was 2 years ago before the regulations changed.
Nah, they don't care about the car behind, but I think it's interesting that he said that, because are we then just going to kind of go around a cycle where they continue to develop cars throughout the year, the air gets dirtier, and it's like, right, another big regulation change? Or do you think they're like, okay, we're starting to see this dirty air come through. At the moment, it's okay, but if it increases, we may need to do something about it. So
it was one car during one race, and Jeddah is pretty bloody windy anyway. So I don't
think the wind had anything to do with it, and I think also that's probably one of the reasons why maybe Hamilton didn't get past George on the fresher tyres.
Yeah, maybe.
So, because he was on the softs, and maybe the lack of overtaking.
No idea.
So, I think it's just interesting that he brought it up, and
yeah, absolutely. I think we'll have to see whether or not it's brought up more over more races in the future, I think.
Yeah. And speaking of Mercedes, interesting. George ahead of Lewis. Lewis on the softer tyres, but still couldn't get past him. Was interesting. But they're just there.
I'm going to ask the question: is Russell better? Is it just that Russell's better? I'm not. This is not me taking away anything from Lewis at all. I'm just asking the question. Like Russell or Lewis said, I'm faster than this guy. Let me across. Let me across. Let me ahead, etc., etc. Like I'm on the better tire. Like what's going on when I reach him? Like etc., etc. And then you get a radio message over to George. If George is able to go round quicker than Lewis is on those mediums, because Lewis also has to treat those mediums pretty well because it was a long stint as well. If George is able to go faster, let him. If he can go faster than Lewis, let him.
Judging on what Lewis said, and he didn't feel connected to the car. Maybe he's just not as comfortable with the car as George is. So George can extract that extra lap time. But you look at 2014 when Daniel joined Red Bull, right, and they had the regulation change with the engines. Was up against Vettel and just got used to the car a lot quicker than Vettel did.
True.
And was out qualifying him and outperforming him. So it could be this, that George is, I can drive this car better than Lewis, and you probably are right. At this moment in time, George is faster. Yeah. Again, it's only 2 races in. Yeah, it's a long season.
I'm just asking the question.
George is... well, the answer is yes. George is quicker at this moment in time. He's quicker in qualifying, seems to be quicker in the races. So we'll see what happens if Lewis gets comfortable with the car, if the mid-season upgrade tailors more to Lewis. It'll be interesting. At this point in time,
who knows?
Russell is the man for Mercedes.
So far, yeah. I think Mr. P5 from last year as well. I think that just goes to show that it's not just this season, might I add. He also was the only race winner for Mercedes last year as well. And again, this is not taking anything away from Hamilton or anything like that. It's literally just saying that in this generation of car, Russell seems to be better. It might be driving style. It could be it could be because Russell was, driving that shitbox of a Williams for so long. So it's something that he's used to, a quite worse car or like a bit of a tractor. I don't know. I've got no idea. But obviously this, the tyres and how, like Lewis having to manage tyres and stuff like that, I think the rest of the season will show, but it's going to be very interesting down at Mercedes for sure.
Look, you can only judge on what you can see, right? And Russell is performing. Simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should
we leave Aston Martin till the end? Because I think that's a bigger conversation.
We can leave them to
I think
the
the rest of them we can probably knock through these pretty quickly. So originally you said Alpine, nothing of note. I changed that. Both Alpine were in the points. I'm not the biggest Alpine fan. However, both of them were in the points, and you can't really knock that. You can't. Like P8 and P9.
They were both they were both in the points because Ocon decided, like, I think I've had enough penalties for the rest of the season.
Well, yeah, there is that. But so, I think that it's much better than last week. Well, at least it was much better than last week for Ocon, as you mentioned. But I think it's good. They showed like, two solid-ish drivers. I did kind of want them to hit each other at points during the race, especially going into turn one, purely for the off-track drama, because that would be insane. Just pure box office entertainment. But they both raced pretty well, very respectful, didn't get into any skirmishes, no wall contact, no tyre bumping.
Nothing of note.
nothing really of note, other than the points. Other than the points. I think the points is very good for Alpine for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's still early, it'll be interesting to see what upgrades they come through, but they're doing what their car is capable of.
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Yeah.
Down at AlphaTauri, you had Yuki obviously missing out on points thanks to K-Mag's beautiful racecraft. Big up the Dane. And the radio was pretty funny, let's be honest. It just was. It was just a noise.
I mean, I wouldn't even call it a radio, I'd just call it sound effect.
Yeah, it was just a noise. It was just which is brilliant. But
to be fair,
me.
I think we would all make that same sound where you've been defending for ages, you're in that final points position, and you just get taken. And you words cannot describe probably how frustrated he felt.
Oh yeah, I fully can imagine he was so frustrated. However, on the flip side of that, like Haas bringing in a point, brilliant. Well done. Well done, Haas.
Yeah,
off to a good start. I think obviously not as good as last season, but I mean off to a good start. Anyway, like getting some points on the board, I think for a team like Haas is going to be important, regardless of whether it's 1 or 15. I mean, 15 obviously is going to be a lot better, but you get my point. I think it's good for them to get off of the right. They've scored points this season. Now let's push on. I think it's a good starting point for Haas for sure.
I would not consider Haas a back marker anymore.
No, not at all.
After the qualifying performances
that's
and the race
McLaren.
Low midfield.
That's the McLaren.
McLaren's just been unlucky.
Their whole weekend was in the bin, wasn't it? Piastri did well during quali, and then they both had damage during lap 1, lap 2, and had to pit and just back of the grid. Piastri did obviously get past Norris and Logan at one point as well. I can't tell whether or not that's because, Lando couldn't be bothered and didn't want to push anymore. I highly doubt that, to be fair. If you're a Formula 1 driver, you're still going to battle, regardless of whether or not it's for 19th or 20th, or, 10th, 11th.
You want to beat your teammate. Whether it's 19 and 20 or first and second, you want to beat your teammate.
True.
So, I don't know, maybe... Well, again, we'd have to look at the tyres, strategy, stuff like that. Damage?
So far,
just because your front wing gets damaged doesn't mean the rest of the car might not have had some damage.
True.
But
there could have been something else.
And he got past Logan.
Yep.
Yeah.
A solid race from Piastri. Without the damage, I think he could have been in with a shout of getting that point that Magnussen claimed.
He could have. Yeah.
He could have. You never really know. We haven't the race pace. I think was not too bad. It was just he was obviously stuck behind the Williams for quite a while. He could have nicked a point.
I think he'll do good for his confidence as well. I mean, he's a rookie. People forget, he's a rookie, right?
Yeah, true.
It's only his second race. He's been unlucky. And I think just getting kind of a solid performance, laps with that car in, he'll only get better and better throughout the season.
I think it was a good thing as well to see both those McLaren drivers come up against each other, considering what happened to Piastri last race and what happened to Norris obviously last race as well. So the rest of the season will be interesting to see who comes out on top in the McLaren garage. And then obviously we spoke of Haas getting the points, and then nothing really of note from Williams. Obviously you had Albon retire on the 27th lap with some sort of it wasn't brakes. That was Lance, or potentially brakes with Lance.
No. Alex's brakes had gone. Remember?
Was it Alex's?
Yeah, the radio message.
Yes, it was some sort of issue with brakes, or power or something, or whatever it was.
Yeah, he said on the radio brakes had gone and he couldn't slow down. And,
but I mean, Logan did okay. He didn't do too badly. Obviously, Logan finished 16th.
he was looking racy at points. It
looked all right, I guess. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, obviously, for the rest of the rest of the season as to how well he actually does, like compared to Albon.
You can't judge after 2 races.
No, not entirely. No.
But I mean, the very rare time that Williams was on screen, he looked all right. So
yeah, true.
Good, and he did well, probably keeping Norris behind him as well for as long as he did.
Absolutely.
So big up Logan Sargent.
Speaking of cars which had no problems keeping people behind, let's talk about Aston.
Should we start with Lance? Because Fernando is going to be a long conversation. So let's start with Lance. Great move on Sainz.
Oh, yeah.
On the opening lap.
Pretty good.
Wow,
yeah.
I was like, damn.
All right,
good,
there's a driver in that.
We were
car.
talking about overtakes, DRS, and he went round the outside, and I was like, damn, Lance Stroll. And they're really unlucky.
Yeah, super unlucky. I think he'll be back in Oz. Absolutely. I think we're yet to see the full potential from Lance in that Aston. Obviously, he's still dealing with hurty wrists. So hopefully he'll be able to improve on his finish. Obviously, like last race in Bahrain, he finished 6th. Which he could, I think, obviously he could have done a little bit better. And I think if he'd have matched sort of what Alonso was doing this race, I think obviously he could have potentially finished even further up in the points. You're maybe looking at challenging those Mercedes cars. I imagine maybe a Russell, Stroll, Hamilton sort of sandwich potentially, but we don't know. We haven't seen the Aston get particularly racy other than Sainz. We haven't seen the Aston get particularly racy under Stroll. Yeah.
So no, I think
2
he'll
races.
do well. And look, the car he did well in Bahrain.
Yep.
And he's obviously healed up a lot more for Jeddah, but like I said, not 100%. Racy in the opening lap, and it was just really unlucky.
Yeah,
but I look forward to see what he does in that car in the next few races.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, with Stroll qualified P6, so I mean, like that clearly he has pace in the car, and Stroll obviously beat Hamilton, Ocon, Piastri, Gasly in Q3 as well. So, I mean, like he definitely knows how to do something with that Aston, but he hasn't unlocked its full potential yet. And I think over the next 4 or 5 races, we'll start to see that for sure.
Definitely. So yeah, let's talk to the man that's making Formula One interesting.
Yes,
El Plan to El Podium.
El Plan to El Podium. El Podium 100, numero... I'm not even going to attempt to speak bad Spanish. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Fully deserved. Regardless of the whole penalty issue, etc., like, it was fully deserved. Alonso himself, obviously, he was off to the left on the starting position. We'll talk about starting positions in a minute, obviously, with Ocon last race as well. But... yeah, phenomenal drive. Can't really knock it whatsoever. Managed tyres well. He seems to be enjoying driving that Aston.
Yeah, happy Fernando is a racy Fernando. He's always racy.
Yeah.
But what I loved what he did was that he, like when he said he had the first penalty, the 5-second gap, and even afterwards with Max, was he kept up with the Red Bulls to use their DRS to build that gap up and then manage his tyres after. I thought that's a guy that's experienced, has done hundreds of races. So, all right, I know exactly what to do to build this gap, and that's just pure Fernando prime racing.
It's using the fact that he has that 100,000 races under his belt compared to the. Admittedly, the experience of Max and Checo is probably pretty bloody good in comparison, but it's just nowhere near Alonso's. It just isn't anywhere near it.
I just wouldn't think of any other driver. Maybe Hamilton doing something like that. It's like, right, I've got a 5-second penalty. Let me just really use my tyres now, keep up with the Red Bulls, use the DRS, build that gap, and then maintain it throughout the race.
It's the sort of thing which those older heads in Formula One would have done. Your Vettels, your Hamiltons, your Alonsos. Yeah. And it worked brilliantly.
Yeah. And a good start as well.
Yeah, great start.
Led a race.
He did. Going into
led a
turn
race
one.
on lap one. Yeah. So,
Unbelievable.
Yeah, good on him. And then he got the 5-second penalty for the start position. I love how he got told he's a penalty. He's like, copy. No arguing, no back. So I was like, why? That's right, copy. You got it. I know what I've got to do. And again, that's that experience, that level-headedness. Is like, I can't change it. There's no point in getting angry. Let's just focus on the car.
Okay, I'll drive faster.
Yeah. So he builds that 5-second gap. Safety car comes out, goes into the pits, and then the rear jack for a microsecond touches the back of the car.
It was in position to pick up the car. For me, I don't see a problem with... This is me personally. This is not like what is completely right or wrong or whatever. I don't care if a jack touches a car because the work hasn't started. You haven't lifted that car off the ground. To me, that's to me. If I'm the FIA, you can have your jacks on the car ready to go, but you cannot have the wheel guns on. Can't start work on the car. Having the jack in position ready to go, touching the car, for me, is not working on the car. I understand some people may have a different view of that, and obviously Aston Martin did. They pulled up 7 examples of where that had been done before, and the FIA had said nothing. And obviously that's how the penalty was sort of voided. I think there were 2 reasons why the penalty was voided, for working on the car too early, and that was one of them. But for me, I didn't see it as an issue. Yes, it was touching the back, but it hadn't lifted it up in the air. For me, so I personally wasn't like, oh, that's bullshit. Like, how could you? It doesn't bother me particularly.
No, I think nothing should touch the car. If it's a penalty, it's a penalty. Yeah. You shouldn't have anything because then, all right, we can put the wheel guns on, right? But we're not going to turn the wheel guns. We're not going to use them, right? And I think it just opens it up to just so many interpretations of the rules. It's like when you come into a pit stop, it's like the guy has to come in, hit the jack. That's it. When you're in a penalty, nothing touches the car till the 5 seconds are up, and then you go. That's simple as that.
Maybe we should just have a sin bin. Like a sin bin. You have a sin bin.
Well, like in rugby.
Yeah. So you come into a pit stop, you do your pit stop, and then you stop dead at the end of the pit lane for 5 seconds, and then you're allowed to leave. I know, obviously, you can't block the pit lane, but you get my point.
If it weren't for the fact that you block other cars, that would be... So you're saying there should be like a separate lane?
A separate lane, a separate sin bin, what's wrong with that? Or in Formula E, where they have those speed lanes or something like that, where you get a power boost or whatever for a certain amount of laps. I don't know. I don't watch Formula E. I tried to. It's rubbish. It just is rubbish. There's no heart and soul to that racing series as far as I'm concerned. It's just not particularly interesting. I have tried. I've tried to watch it. It's just not particularly interesting. Anyway, they have specific lines where they go through to get an extra 10% of battery charge or whatever it is, or an extra 10% of power output. Again, I'm not 100% sure. You could easily have one corner or the inside of the start-finish straight. You have to take that at a certain speed, like for example, or you just go through the pit lane. Obviously, you go through the pit lane at 80 kilometers an hour. There's a specific lane somewhere on the track where you can only do 100 kilometers an hour because that would take you an extra 5 seconds to do, or whatever it is. But it's a slow lane type thing. It's like not like a bogey lap on like a rally course or something like that, but somewhere specific where you have a sin bin type thing where you go and serve your penalty. Or you can do the work to the car as soon as it comes in, but then you have the lollipop man comes out and he says, right, as soon as the car drops back onto the floor, that's when the penalty starts, and then you're allowed to go. Because I don't know, I think the amount of penalties that have come from touching the car too soon or something like that has been quite a few. So obviously the process doesn't seem to work very well.
I just think keep it simple. If you get a 5 second time penalty, it's added to your time at the end of the race.
All that. That's one of the easier ones.
That's it. Because sometimes if safety car and virtual safety car comes out, that can negate some of the penalty, right?
True. Yeah.
So
because obviously Alonso got quite a cheap penalty for his improper start position because of the safety car. So I mean, there is that to it. But I don't know. Then again, obviously, if you have to serve a time penalty in the pit lane or in your pit box or in the bogey lane or in the bogey spot or whatever it is, the sin bin, while you're sat there in those 5 seconds, the other cars on track are getting closer and closer to you. So I don't know. It has a different effect, doesn't it, than just adding it on at the end.
I guess one of the issues with that is how do you safely rejoin?
I mean, it's just the pit lane. You just have to like when drivers come out of their.
No. When you're talking about like a separate part of the racetrack.
Yeah, a separate part of the racetrack. I think you could potentially make it like the end of the pit lane. You just sit there for 5 seconds and then you go, or something like that. If you were to do something like that, it's just unsafe release.
That's fine.
You just have safe or unsafe release, and that's up to the driver or the team. You could have a team representative go to that sin bin box, stand there.
No, you can just have the traffic light system.
Yeah, traffic light system or whatever it is. And if you so happen to pit when other people are trying to get through the pit lane and you cannot get out of that sin bin, that's on you. I don't know.
I think it's just
my idea needs some work. It's not as good as the idea as having a America's, European, Middle East and Oceania champion and then a world champion and doing it in sprints like mini tournaments. That's a better idea.
So bad.
It's not so bad. No, we've talked about this. It makes sense.
It doesn't make sense. You're just trying it. You're just trying to get someone to win a championship.
No, I'm not trying to get someone to win a championship. I just think the logistics of shipping
those
everything...
glasses look orange to me.
No. The logistics of shipping everything around the world is absolutely horrific. So why not have specific, like, mini championships that, you know, you would have, like, America's champion, and then you would have a European champion. But it doesn't... It's just like... It's really a name, and you just have all of those races at one point sort of thing. But you still have the world champion. The America's champion or whatever, it doesn't particularly matter. It's just, you know, so Formula One can make even more money out of it, which I'm sure they would love. Well, the FAA would love. But it stops from shipping everything to all over the globe. Like going from the Middle East to Australia to the Middle East. That makes no sense. Why not just do all the Middle Eastern races at the same time? That's what I'm talking about. I don't particularly give a shit about whether or not Lando Norris is the Oceania champion or whatever. It'll be Max. But logistically, and if Formula One want to be eco, bin off shipping everything around the world stupidly, bring back the V10s and stop shipping everything everywhere, because that's the real issue. All of the cars during one season use almost no fuel compared to one flight to get all of the teams to one race. Like, it's so stupid.
Well, then you'll have to speak to the commercial team, because
I want V10
races pay extra.
I want V10.
Eco
fuels.
The circuits pay extra to be the first, to be the last.
True.
So I think they have to work that out, because I think they could and then you got to look at weather and other logistics, like other sporting events around. So yes, they should do it, and I think they have got plans to make it more sustainable.
They should.
But it's
completely off the topic of the race this week, but but yeah, that
we just never concentrate on the race.
No, apparently not. No, it's just complete, just gibberish at this point. Going back to the race, the whole penalty issue.
So Fernando has his 5-second penalty, comes in, does it, they touch it to Jack, they added 10 seconds on at the end, and then we get into this whole debacle about when they should have told him. Is it a penalty? George is third, Fernando's third. And I say this to you, I say this to everyone, what is Formula One? Formula One is a big drama show.
Yep.
A big circus, and occasionally they go racing, because the biggest drama was his third place penalty.
Literally, yeah.
Sergio won, and he's 1 point behind Max in the championship. Max went from 15th to second. Yeah, whatever. Right, this penalty. What's going on with
boy. I think so. I think they. So, as far as I'm aware, there were two reasons as to why the penalty was overtaken. One, there is something written in the sporting regulations that say it must be awarded, or the penalty must be applied within 25 minutes of the incident, and it wasn't. The second one is Aston Martin were like, well, you've got 7 examples of when the jack touched the rear of the car while the penalties were being served, and you had no issues with those. So I think it was a combination potentially of the two, either or. I think one of them alone stands up. Touching the rear of the car with the jack is the less likely. Like the FIA can be like, we understand we missed those previous 7 Mr. and Mrs. Aston Martin, or Mr. and Mrs. Stroll or Alonso or whoever, but we're going to apply the penalty.
So I think the first one on the regulations, I think what that's supposed to mean is when something is investigated, the stewards have 25 minutes to dish out a penalty.
Exactly.
So they didn't know. So they didn't know. They only knew until like the last lap, and then they did dish out a penalty within 25 minutes. I think that part is not so important. But I think the 2 reasons, the first one that you said is, oh, you started working on the jack touch, and Aston Martin came with all these examples saying, well, no, look at Max in Brazil, look at this. And I think, what was the second reason? I can't remember now. It's literally, I've just forgotten. But there was another reason why the penalty was overturned or something like
Touching
that.
They had the 7 examples or the 25 minutes? Or are you thinking of a third reason?
There's a third reason that Aston Martin came with. So the first reason wasn't even involved. They didn't do that. Aston Martin didn't come with that reason.
I thought that was the reason.
No, that rule was followed because they didn't know about the penalty until like the last lap. The investigation until the last lap, and they dished out the penalty within 25 minutes. So that 25-minute rule is like, hey, we know something's happened. We're going to give you a result within 25 minutes, and if we don't do it in 25 minutes, the stewards, then that penalty is moot.
I guess it's the like I don't know the actual wording of it specifically.
Yeah,
but I guess it's
the regulation.
It depends on
the stewards.
Is it when the incident occurred? Or is it when it's noted?
No, it's when it's noted.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. There's 2 different ways of looking at it.
No, but that 25-minute rule is, like I said, when it was noted. So it was only noted until the last lap.
Yeah.
And then the stewards have 25 minutes.
Then they have 25 minutes, yeah. See, whereas I thought it was the other way around.
But there was something else that Aston Martin came with that...
I'm not 100% sure. I've been trying to Google it and have a quick look, but I can't.
Oh, I know what it is. So apparently, there was a meeting with the FIA and the teams in which they said you're not allowed to touch the car when you're serving a penalty.
Yeah.
And Aston Martin actually brought the minutes of that meeting and said, look, actually in this meeting, you never have said that. So you're just basically bullshitting.
Yeah,
so that was the second reason, which is you just made it up. It goes, so not only did they come with the 7 examples, they came with the meeting minutes to say, yeah, you know how you said, like, we're not supposed to touch the car? You never said that. And here's the
Where were these Aston Martin employees? Why weren't they working for Mercedes in 2021 in Abu Dhabi? Because there would have been some words said. I think regardless, like Aston Martin did obviously play it very well and sort of showed the FAA up that their rules are written so terribly. I mean, you don't need another example on top of, Max not even knowing whether or not he won the World Championship last year in Japan or not. Like, these regulations are badly written at points. But for Aston Martin to go ahead and be like, well, in these minutes, you didn't say that. And also here's 7 examples of, like when you didn't give penalties and you said that these penalties were served correctly. However, regardless of whether or not any of those reasons or worked or didn't work or whatever, or could have worked or didn't work or anything, any combination, the fact of the matter is you have the race stewards have noted that he didn't serve his time penalty correctly, supposedly. Why not then go, we'll stop for a minute. We won't do the podium thing. We'll just have a quick look now, because it was literally 2 minutes after they sprayed champagne that they were like, oh, actually, we're going to demote him from P3 to P4 because when we're going to give him a 5-second time penalty. So if you're telling me that it took an extra 10 minutes, they could have just said, all right, guys, we're gonna wait for the podium celebration for 10 minutes. We're just going to verify that this worked correctly. You're telling me they couldn't have done that? It's just the
I think
FIA seem to balls things up more often than not at this point. It's crap. It really is. And I do hope that Liberty Media are pushing back on them and being like, this is crap. Because it is.
The only thing I can say about that is a lot goes on.
No, I understand that.
And TV. So it's not like, hey, we're just going to pause it for 2 minutes or 10 minutes. There's other stuff that goes. I totally agree with you. It's annoying as anything, right? Because George should be up there, or Fernando should be up there, or double check. Because what will happen is, let's just say they do what you said, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a penalty for Fernando. George goes up there. Aston Martin will be like, where you said it takes 2 minutes. Aston Martin's like, no, we're going to appeal that. We're going to review it. Oh, thanks for reviewing it. We'll give extra time, and you just delay it even more and delay it even more.
Yeah, I do understand that.
Seven examples.
But at the same time, without knowing that they were going to appeal it and etc., I do think that there's some place where common sense has to kick in, and it just didn't.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Yeah,
common sense should have started.
Going on with the FIA.
You should have had FIA. They should have gone, right, has Alonso served that penalty correctly? Yes or no? Right. The FIA watch the video as Alonso serving his penalty, and they go, yeah, that's fine.
Ooh,
so
I think I lost you.
If it's still on the recording for me, so they go ahead and. Like, it seems like potentially either they took too long to review the video of the penalty being served, or another team has reported them for not serving the penalty correctly. More than likely, it was the other one. However, my issue is that they should have checked it when the penalty was being served. That's when the common sense should kick 100%. In, because then you wouldn't have this rubbish. Everyone saw it. Even bloody the Sky Sports were talking about it.
Yeah, Martin Brundle saw it, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But the FIA didn't see it. And you're right. If someone serves a penalty, you look at the video, you look at live, whatever, and say, have they served that penalty correctly? Especially after what happened in Bahrain. Yeah. Yes, they have. Good. No, they haven't. Right, you've got a 10-second time penalty. It's as simple as that. The fact that they don't check that penalties have been served correctly, well, in this case, it's amateur.
And they had how many laps, how many times, how much time did they have to check it? And then it was only noted, like, last couple of laps after the race had finished. Yeah. Stupid. Utterly stupid.
Probably because, like you said, another team complained.
Well, I don't know who's behind Aston Martin in the garage. Like, I guess, obviously, who finished the other side of them? Alpine and...
They were at the back. But what could happen is someone at race control in the factory could have seen it, gone to the teams. Yeah. Hey, we might want to appeal this because on the live feed, this is what happens. But we're coming up to an hour, so we'll have to quickly wrap up. I think two things. Meme of the week, just go on Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso's Instagram. They're your memes of the week.
True. The photo of his forehead is brilliant. However, I'm going to say meme of the week is for me was Mercedes keeping up the posts around them finishing P3. Just delete the posts, lads. What is going on?
I love the fact that Fernando's just shit posting.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. His TikTok of being like, "Hello, I'm racing in Formula One, like the Grand Prix this weekend." Hilarious. It's just such shit posting. It's absolutely brilliant. Can't knock it at all. He is having a lot of fun this season, and I am here for it.
I love it. And I guess the next one is let's have a quick preview of Australia.
Yes.
I think we should have any offhand predictions, right? Because most predictions are going to be Red Bull 1-2. Any offhand predictions? Do you think Alonso is going to keep his podium streak up? Do you think Lance is going to get in there? Do you think Mercedes will get a P3 without a penalty?
I'm going 1-2. I'm like a podium. I think if you say your podium prediction is anything other than Verstappen, Perez, Alonso at this current point in time, I don't know what you're saying, because that should be your podium prediction every single time. That is until there's any drastic changes. You could potentially throw Stroll in there, but let's be honest, it's gonna...
And maybe Russell.
But no, for me, no. I think it's stupid to even suggest that, like if you had to put your house on who is going to be on the podium, you had to. It's going to be those three names in that order. It just is. If you do anything else, if you suggest anything else, I don't think that you have any wheel knowledge.
I think third race, I don't think Fernando's going to be third. Doesn't mean it's not going to be on the podium. I just don't think it's going to be
So
third.
what do you think is going to happen?
I think he'll get a second. I think Max will be first. I think Fernando's going to be second. And I think George Russell's going to be third.
Really?
That's
where the hell is
George
Perez then?
I think Perez will have an issue.
You think Perez? Oh, I mean, to be fair, like obviously these cars can have issues and these drivers can have issues, but I just don't. I don't think they will.
Whether he has an issue, whether he has a crash, I think that's my prediction.
I think you're wrong, but okay.
Well,
I think any other predictions?
We'll see by the fantasy.
We will.
Any other predictions? I think Piastri will continue. I think he's going to out-qualify Norris again, and he's going to out-race Norris, and I think he'll get a point, because I think it's his home race.
I was going to say, if he could nick a point in Australia, fair play, lad. Fair play. I don't think he will in that tractor, but fair play. Put on a good show for the home fans in your tractor, and see what you can do.
Stop calling it a tractor!
I don't want it to be a tractor. I want it to be the W14. I don't have any other outlandish predictions. I don't think. No. Kevin usually does pretty well in Oz.
Kevin does do well at Oz, actually. Yeah.
So there's something there. Obviously, the track layout's changed recently, and blah 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 blah. But Kevin usually does pretty well. So I think Kevin's one to watch for sure for the Australian race. Yeah,
it's a lot more flowy than Bahrain. So yeah.
It's like Saudi Arabia, but upside down.
Are you going to be up early in the morning to watch it?
Yes, I will.
We're going to have to end it. We're going to end this podcast on this crappy joke that you just made.
Wait. What time is the race? Because you said you're getting up early to watch it.
It's 6 a.m. for UK, so maybe 7 a.m. for
7 in the morning. I will be up ready to watch. You know I will be. Yeah. I think the only race really that's at an awkward time for me will be the what's it called? Las Vegas Grand Prix. I think that's the only one that will be at a really awkward time. All the others, I think. Oh wait, Japanese Grand Prix is 7 in the morning for me, so 6 in the morning for you.
Okay.
US Grand Prix is at 9 in the evening. So is the Mexican Grand Prix. Las Vegas is 7 in the morning on a Saturday. So it's just 7 in the morning. Okay. I think that's fine. So 6 in the morning for you.
Yeah, I'll be up for that. That's God. But yeah.
You don't seem particularly happy.
But never happy with early mornings. But yeah, so that's a wrap up on Jeddah, episode 3. Australia next. And Formula 1.5 continues to excite.
Well,
Formula Red Bull is done and dusted.
Formula Red Bull, yeah. Well, we said at the beginning of the episode, it was a pretty boring race. We've managed to waffle on for 1 hour and 7 minutes so far, according to my recording.
Yeah, because we keep segueing.
We keep segueing.
You keep segueing.
Yeah, I keep just running my mouth.
Okay,
right.
maybe one last segue. What was your fantasy points for Jeddah?
Oh, I did badly because I still had Norris in there because I'm an idiot. So I still had Norris and I still had Nick De Vries. So I've changed it up a bit now. I don't know whether or not I can give you like what my I need to sign in.
You can get your points for the race. Yes. All right.
I can do it on my phone, but essentially I didn't do particularly well. I know I have Red Bull and Aston Martin as my teams, and I've got Verstappen. I've got him captain, so he gets like double points or whatever. But I don't think I did particularly well because I had De Vries, Kevin, Alonso, Verstappen, and Norris. And I did recently. I did a change where F1 Fantasy. Here we go. I did a change where I swapped out. No, I don't want to look at Verstappen. I just want to... Oh, for God's sake. The navigation on the F1 app, by the way, if you're listening, F1 app team, navigation isn't great. So I swapped out Norris and De Vries for Zhu and Perez.
Okay. Do you know what points you got for Saudi?
Trying to have a look. Completed.
I'm just trying to take this win.
So for Bahrain, I got 258 points.
Yeah.
For Saudi, I got 282 points.
You weren't that bad. I got 285.
Okay, so it wasn't far off. What was your team?
I lost
looking like
17. Sad Max, who's my captain,
Yeah.
got 120 points. Fernando, Sergio, obviously got the win. Red Bull and Aston Martin teams. But I got Nick de Vries in, so he got me 7 points. And I had minus 17 for Albon. Because he didn't classify.
Yeah.
So you lose
Lando
20
got me
points.
7 points.
So, yeah, it wasn't too bad. But yeah, I'll make a couple of changes for Australia.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, so like I said,
Yeah.
I changed my team up. But, yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
another podcast.
Another
You never
podcast.
talked about your 107 thing with Logan Sargent.
Oh, for God's sake.
Maybe we'll say that.
Well, we'll very quickly.
We'll say that for next
Very
time.
quickly.
Oh, you want to very quickly.
He was in violation of the 107 rule, which is what this podcast is named after. That was all I was going to say. And then I was going to say this bloody American went, did you just assume my lap time, and was allowed in because of his FP 1, 2 and 3 times. So all of a sudden new rules are written for him. Well, not new rules, but you get my point. But he was slower than 107%, so you have to be 107% of the speed of the pole sitter, and he wasn't because he didn't really set a lap time. So he shouldn't have technically actually even started the race, technically. But the FIA allowed him in because they're too busy spending all of Max Verstappen's money for, I don't know, swearing in the pit lane or Hamilton touching a rear wing or whatever it was. So, yeah, they're a bit too busy.
Wow. Oh, yeah. He did a 208.
Yeah, it was because obviously he didn't get a push lap in because I think he was stopped.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was all I was going to say.
Yeah, but the rules is if you're quick, if you're in good times in the practice sessions, you're allowed to start.
I also have one other thing to say. If Hulkenberg takes up until the British Grand Prix to score points, then
Nico Hulkenberg.
Then it was a good idea to keep Mick. However, if he scores before Great Britain, good idea to bring him in. And Gunther, you're a genius. Obviously, if he scores more points over the season, but he'll score before Great Britain. He just will. He just absolutely will. Do you know what round the British Grand Prix is? It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11th round. So you've got another 9 races to score points, mate. 8 races to score points.
It'll be all right.
Anyway, that was it for the 107 podcast. I'll let you wrap it up, Ash. Why don't you take it away?
Well, I've got one more thing to add.
Oh, we've just got so many women.
No, thank you all for listening. Australia next week. Not next week, sorry. Week after.
Week after.
2 weeks. But we'll do a podcast next week because I'm sure
we'll be doing
drama
something.
will happen.
Do you know what we should talk about?
Yeah.
Drive to Survive.
What? Oh, yeah.
We should do Drive to Survive next week. So look forward to that next week, guys.
Yeah. So we'll spend 10 minutes talking about Drive to Survive and probably the other hour talking about Netflix series.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'd be like, have you seen this?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
I also like to add, your cushion on your chair makes it look like you've got cat ears.
Maybe I do have cat ears. Did you just... Because I slipped down. Because I was slowly, surely sinking in my chair.
But yeah, thank you all for listening. Have a great week, and we'll catch you all soon.
See you guys soon. Cheers.